Hello everyone, Maurice here, and today bring you a meta report for Axie Infinity Origins Season 7 Rare Era. So it's still pretty early, it's just 1 week in, and so let's just get into the data. Um, yeah, so the gist of it, oh, I guess I can just show this first, is that obviously Sponge is, as you expect, is still very, very strong. And yeah, Spikes and Poison is also pretty good, but later on I'll get into the data about how Jinx maybe, and actually another two archetypes that could be good against Sponge, especially if I assume you've probably played a lot against Sponge if you have been on the Axie Infinity Origins ladder recently. Yeah, so that's basically the gist of the TLDR. But before that, let's just get into the statistics. First is the player base, and yes, so now at the time of writing is 100 and something players are at Challenger. There's still very, very few players at Challenger at the moment. A lot of people are pushing, like in Dragon, it's about 1,000 player, and as you expect, most people are stuck at Tiger. And here's the overall database, the player base, and interestingly, actually more than 40,000 players has played Axie Origins, of course. Um, I should show this figure, which is more representative in the sense that you can see actually more than 15,000 players only get up to 500 victory stars, meaning they really never progress too much. And in terms of actual players who actually, I would say, seriously play a game enough to get to Tiger would actually be about maybe like yeah 10,000 players. All right, so this is basically the above this point here. Yep, so in that sense, it's still quite a lot, but maybe hopefully, of course, with more new updates, then we might get more new players coming in. Okay, so let's just get into the archetype usage. So one thing to note is that there's only one player, yeah, that's what I should say here as well, is that only one player at the moment is above 2,000 victory stars, and so yeah, that's why it's only one like archetype in that sense is Sponge. But the rest of it actually gives you a pretty good story. One thing I should say first is that unfortunately, like, it's either because of my internet speed or is it because of the updated API, I actually can't get data on at least for lower down the ladders because there's just more players and this is really only maybe the top 600 players or so. Yeah, so hopefully maybe for next report I can get a bit more data, but yeah, this took me quite a while just to get this data. Whatever problem it is, because there's a change in API as well, so there's some adjustment there. But anyway, even just looking at the top 600 players, you already get a sense of how things are shaping up in a sense that yep, Sponge still very strong, especially at the top. And you can see spikes and poison are actually pretty good as well. Do note that right, not many players are at above 1900. Let me just actually quickly check, right? So it's really like 20. So 20 players who played it. So, and of course, this is by number of matches played as opposed to number of players. So of course, players can switch, and this is maybe one of the reasons why we see Jinx being up there. And later on, I'll tell about like why, right? Because there's so many players playing Sponge, and Jinx could potentially be good against Sponge. So it could be like a counter, like a sniping kind of situation, perhaps. I don't know, but yeah, that's what's happening at the top, which is basically like the top 20 players. And if you go further down, this is when you start to see other things like Feather, meaning like AoE, and then Sandals as well, and then of course Sustain, still there, always be there, especially I think, yeah, I think Sustain is just always be there, especially to I would say farm on less optimal team, but also with the Balok and like the new mechanics for dealing damage of shields and stuff, I think it's still pretty good. And then we actually have, other things like Confused as well, Triple Owl, Hot Butt also, like those could, some of them could be pretty good against Bubble as well. So yeah, that's really the main thing I want to say. I guess the other thing I should say is, Sando is also here as well, but the other thing I should say is Leafy and Topaz, those are the very big archetypes for maybe two seasons ago or more. But unfortunately, you have to go very, very lower down to find those leafy topaz kind of team. So, yeah, unfortunately, for some players who maybe bought just leafy or topaz maybe 2, 3 seasons ago, just stuck with that team, then yeah, might have to struggle a bit at least. Might not be able to climb to the top. But that is actually not the worst for this season. One of the reasons being for casual players, there's a lot more incentive to play now because of the parts evolution and yeah, just AXP in general. It just feels good to see the AXP after every match. Okay, so that is mainly for the usage, I would say, the archetype usage. So actually, let's get into the win rates, and this is where I will make it a bit smaller so I can see kind of everything. And do note that the data is from day 4 to day 7. So that is after when the player can get access to all the runes and charms from the marketplace. And the key point really is Sponge, the highest win rate, of course. But then Spikes and Feather are actually pretty good. Um, I would say Jinx as well. So interestingly, Jinx is doing quite well at the top, so that is something to take note of, I would say. Um, yeah, later on I will basically go into the matchup and you'll see why. And I guess, yeah, let's just get into that. And here is the overall matchup. I must say for this one is overall in the sense of everything above 1600. So it's overall in terms of the top 600 players. Of course, there are some that are more optimal than others in terms of teams. And now when I say optimal, it could also include parts evolution, right? So of course, the players at the top probably tend to have more evolved parts, and then of course stronger axes, stronger teams. But this should still give you some sort of general idea of how the matchup goes, and you can see for Sponge, it has pretty good matchup against most things, but you can see Jinx is one of those that are really uh, can be quite good against Sponge, meaning like Sponge might struggle with, and similarly for Hot Butt as well. And then the other thing I should point out is actually Purge, even though I must say there are not many people, especially at the top 600, playing Purge, so the data is pretty yeah, scarce in that sense, but still, well, the fact that there's data, meaning actually for me, I filter off data with at least 10 matches, so meaning this will have at least 10 matches with Sponge struggling against Purge. So Perch might be something to think about, but of course, Perch might struggle against more aggro team like Sando and Lemonade or etc. So still interesting to look at. And okay, I think I should have mentioned also before I scrolling too much is the sustain. Yeah, I should really talk about sustain as well. So sustain here, it's really I would say farming against things like spikes, poison, Leafy, but yeah, I don't really see much Leafy. But again, Jinx, yeah, it's always sustain. Jinx is always the main thing. Yeah. So if you really hate sustain and sponge, then maybe you just want to play Jinx. Of course, for Jinx, it's not the best against things like spikes, poison, feather. Right? Those are just too much damage really for the Jinx to deal with. So, and Jinx might not be fast enough, and basically it's just too much damage that you can't really get rid of those damage as quickly as you want. So that's the main problem really. Yeah, but if you can dodge those matchup that play Jinx, is actually pretty good. Okay, so I think that is pretty much all I want to say in terms of the general matchup. Yeah, just to conclude is that I really quite like this season, not really because of the meta, but actually more because of the updates in terms of the AXP. Just because now I'm more just like thinking about grinding for a particular team, AXP to level up my axes, and there's definitely a much bigger sense of progression just because before I was sure I'm just going to play this team and then I'm just going to okay try and grind up the leaderboard just to try and get some access rewards or something, but now yeah, even if I lose this I still feel good in the sense that I still feel okay because I still see the plus something AXP pop up right after every match, and so I do feel like in terms of player experience this is a big plus, at least for me or for casual players hopefully. So yeah, so let's just hope that And we can all enjoy a season, be it win or lose, just because we still get AXP, and we still have some progression, and of course, hope we can forget about how bad it feels when we just get OTK'd by like 13 bubble bombs. So okay, so that's it for this video. So do check out the blog post. There are a lot more additional data. This is about runes, and then different, I guess, times at which maybe different players, different archetypes tend to be played at certain brackets, as well as of course the matchups for specific brackets for victory stars. Is because of course at the top could be quite different from further down. And yeah, so that is it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.